Hello, everyone. My name is Joanne Lockwood, and I'm your host for the Inclusion Bites podcast. In this series, I have been interviewing a number of amazing people and simply having a conversation around the subject of inclusion, belonging, and generally making the world a better place for everyone to thrive. If you'd love to join me in the future, then please do drop me a line to joe.lockwood@seechangehappen.co.uk. That's SEE, changehappen.co.uk. You'll be able to catch up with all of the previous shows on iTunes, Spotify, and the usual places. So plug in your headphones, grab a decaf, and let's get going. Today is episode 32 with the title, Standing in the Middle and Feeling Excluded. And I have the absolute honour and privilege to be joined by my great friend, Tom Morley. Tom describes himself as someone who is compelling, cheeky, unbelievably expensive, irreverent, but at the end of the day, value for money. And when I asked Tom to describe his superpower, he said it is authenticity and turning up. Hello, Tom.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. And that whole authenticity thing, you probably know this phrase. Once you can fake that, you got it made.
Thank you for joining me. I know we've spoken many hundreds of hours over the last lockdown months, but it's been great. We've finally been able to catch up and schedule this in. So Tom, tell me about standing in the middle and feeling excluded.
Well, first of all, I have to fess up about the decaf because you and I have worked together. And I know you wouldn't go near decaf. So I prepared for this by making myself a real full coffee. So rein me in if I go a bit too far at any point. So
bounce off the walls.
Standing in the middle, I'm still feeling excluded, refers to being the youngest child in a family, youngest of 4 boys, and the other 3 always looked like a gang to me, fully formed gang. And because, this happens to the 4th child, you have to look for a role. And I was naturally sort of quite artistic anyway, and encouraged by my mum, I have to say, who thought she could move me into the area of graphic design and I could make some money. We were a poor family, so she thought, at last I've had a child who could make us some money. So that kind of excluded me even more from the gang because they thought I was kind of namby-pamby while they were building camps and falling out of trees and stuff. So when I grew up, I thought, I looked around and I thought, if I become a vocal harmony facilitator, I could see you stand in the middle of the circle and you divide the group into 3 and you teach this group and then teach that group and you teach that, all different parts. And they're all looking at you all the time. So I thought that I'm bound to be included then. I'll not only be included, I'll be the leader. But there was a quirk. I took a drum with me and I used to lead with the drum. And then everybody said, "Oh, great, that drumming thing was great. When you come back, can you bring the drums?" And I said, "This is vocal harmony. It's not about drums. Just 200 people, 1 drum, right? And me, the leader, in the middle." They said, "Yeah, we love the drumming. Bring the drums." So eventually it was like Polanski's The Tenant, when you kind of get moved to be this person that everyone wants you to be. So I brought 200 drums and gave them out. They all loved it. But the trouble was with that, at the end of the session, they all kind of loved me and everything, but they went to the bar and I ended up loading the van and missing all the jokes and all the humor. And then by the time I got to the bar, they were all leaving. "Bye, Tom, great session." So I kind of discovered that I couldn't engineer physically a way of being in the gang. I had to kind of join the gang by being, that's why authenticity comes into it in the intro. I found that if I was authentic, I didn't have to trick 200 people into looking at me. I just hang out, and say, I'm a bit fed up about this, or this went wrong, or that went right, and actually, man, I could save myself so many years of training to impress people, because nobody really needs to do that. You just need to say, I'm feeling a bit down today. Oh, come over here, mate. Oh, tell me about it. That's all you need to do.
I love the way you said that you were you had this vision about this, as you said, vocal harmony facilitator, and that sounds such a great role, vocal harmony facilitator. And I've never come across that, but it cast me back to the days as a young person. We're sitting around the campfire, and you do those rounds. London's burning, and it all starts at different times, and you try and get that harmony going. So. Yeah. I really took me right back to that point in my life, and with some fond memories. But isn't it incredible sometimes that despite our best efforts, the thing we want to be proud of, people don't relate to. They relate to something that it's incidental, like your drum. This is who you were, this vocal harmony facilitator, and suddenly you become the drummer out of that, and it's like almost like forcing you to be someone you weren't trying to be.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my brothers all moved into the furniture business. They made a lot of money in antiques. They were moving furniture all around the world, and my joke was, well, you people, you get everybody sitting down. I'm going to get everybody standing up. So all my groups, I always get them standing up. And then when I bought the drums, that kind of African wooden drums with these beautiful hats on, covers in this beautiful African material and string, and they're really lovely things. And I'd turn up at these posh venues as the facilitator, and the door people would say, "Oh, are they the new bar stools? You should go around the back, mate, and bring them in the goods entrance." So again, I was, and they used to drive, well, they still do, drive furniture all around the country. I'm not doing that. I ended up driving these drums up and down motorways, nearly going over. I could swap stories with them about how I was falling asleep at the wheel. I was meant to be jetting around the world, with nothing but some songs in my head, teaching people vocal harmony. So, it's been a disaster.
So, do you think that people kind of labeling you as the tradesperson because you were the lugger? Because that's one of the inevitable things when you're the one that's setting up the kit, doing all this. You almost like they're seeing you as the hired help rather than the main course, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of kind of prophecy in it that what you're trying to run away from just follows you around. And like I say, when I don't try, then I just connect with people anyway. But I've kind of burdened myself with 300 drums. I mean, luckily, just before lockdown proper, I knew I was going to be working online because I could see it coming. So I unloaded the van, and I've got it as a backdrop in my studio here, all the drums piled up. And everyone said, why don't you use green screen? But 3 days later, some vandals who normally just nick mopeds and set them alight in the local churchyard decided to nick one and set it alight against our van. So it blew up in the middle of the night. And we got these messages from the neighbours saying, there appears to be a van on fire. It looks a bit like yours. I hope it's all right. But I'd taken all the drums out. So maybe I shouldn't have taken them out, come to think of it. I should have just left them in there, got insurance money, and then said to people, it's vocal harmony from now on. Sorry. Damn, I thwarted my fate.
I mean, just talking about some of your life in general, you've got a quite striking appearance, and your look is very you. Do you find that that's ever led you to be judged or excluded, or do you find the opposite?
Well, Yeah, both judged and excluded and included. I mean, the whole thing about anybody who's a rebel, or visually a rebel, or they speak like a rebel. What they're really doing is they are trying to move away from the mediocrity of normal life, which they would, obviously not like. And there's a small tribe of people you can join. It's why a lot of bands meet at art school. It's when I first went to art school in the foundation year, I was dismally kind of disappointed because it was just like an extended sixth form. I thought I was going to be with Salvador Dali and people, kind of budding surrealists or Dada people, but they're all people going, yeah, I quite like Magritte. I'm going to do my version. So, but then when I got to Leeds Polytechnic is where I met Green and we formed Scritti Politti. That now they really were proper artists. A lot of us, we were a whole kind of cohort of rebels. Partly because it was the freest course in the country. It was just like a big warehouse, and you had to fight for space with the second and third years, and so it was a real kind of growing up. All the tutors weren't interested in us; they just wanted to do their own work. Except maybe someone like Jeff Nuttall, who's a situationist. He's dead now, but a lovely guy. And he would just come around and challenge us sometimes, say, that's rubbish, that's brilliant, publish it. Why are you doing that? Yeah, we grew up fast there. And also nobody encouraged us to say, well, it's Monday, what are you going to do this week? That wouldn't occur to them. So we had to say, it's Monday, what am I going to do this week? I've got all these resources. Because in those days, you could get money to do crazy things from the college itself. We got grants from the government. We got our rent paid. So we were really free. I mean, we didn't know how lucky we were. There was just a point in history when that was encouraged, kind of creativity was really encouraged. And nobody said, what are you going to do with this when you leave? They just said, go and influence, be an influence in the world, be a good influence, whether you're a sculptor, painter, performer. It was a different time. We couldn't believe it. Probably only 10 years after we left art school that the Royal College was saying, we're gearing ourselves to what industry needs. And we go, what? How can you call yourself an art school?
I mean, picking up on something you just said there, which I find really, really resonates, is this. You basically said you can't keep everybody happy, you can't please everybody, and it always resonates for me where it's better to engage one person than to have 100 followers who aren't engaged. It's that meaningful connection that you want, and so motivating and engaging your tribe, your cohort, whatever resonates with you, is actually far better than trying to keep everybody happy. Because if you keep everybody happy, nobody's happy, in my experience. At least you're better off with half the world loving you.
Yeah, well, half. I mean, I said to my wife, who thinks sometimes I'm on social media too much, I said, well, look, I am ridiculously expensive. I need to engage those people who are going to pay, and they don't all know about me. So I will just tell the whole world what I'm doing all the time. 99% of people will hate me, 1% will love me, 0.0.1% will employ me, but they'll pay me so much that it'll get us through the year just fine. And so, at first I wanted everybody to love me when I was a kid, but man, is that, that's a fool's, what is it? Fool's game.
Errand,
people do it.
Fool's game, it's an unwinnable game, isn't it?
It's an unwinnable game. Advertising will suggest you can do it if you buy this product or buy into this brand, or you get this and you get that and you get that. And then everyone gets to 35, 40. They're absolutely exhausted and nobody cared anyway, you know.
Yeah, I think one of the things I hear a lot of people talk about in the inclusion world is that this deadlock of feeling like you have to include everybody. How do we include everybody in this? And I think in order to break that deadlock, you have to recognize that not everybody it can be included. And as long as you're fair, you're respectful, you're giving people equality of opportunity, and you're giving people dignity, then there isn't really a lot you can do fairer than that. And some people may not be suitable. They may not have the capability, may not have the interest. And I say it's perfectly valid for a brand to say, I cater for very thin, affluent women in our sportswear line, and this product isn't for you. In the same way that when you're an artist, you produce music or entertain, you know full well that not everybody is going to be happy with that, and you go, well, fine, that doesn't matter. I've got people who love me for what I am, and that's the authenticity side, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that what you're describing is a kind of utopia where the brand that caters for the thin, affluent white people is kind of seen as such, as that is a very small minority. And the rest of you, we're doing your clothes over here, your style over there, and there's no judgment between them. However, it's set up differently. And advertising probably understands psychology more than most. So it's the whole thing about FOMO is has just got crazy now. So I mean, when they started airbrushing photographs, long before Photoshop, when they used to airbrush photographs with a real airbrush, you know, in a proper lab, and it would take hours and hours to extend a model's legs or bring their hips in or something. Now, of course, everyone can do it on their phones, but they spent a lot of money doing that, and in a deliberate way to exclude people, but say, however, you won't feel excluded if you buy this product or you get on this diet or you follow this plan. So it's all. I mean, the whole of Western culture is based on exclusion deliberately, so it can sell us products, and division, divide and rule. So to be a rebel, and why people end up in art schools or communes or bands or gangs, even, you know, it's to try and get away from that manipulation and say, no, we're setting up an alternative camp over here. But the trouble is, as Jamie Wheal talks about this in a much more eloquent way than I do, he says there's 4 stages. There'll be Andy Warhol's factory proper, you know, or Studio 54 proper, and then it gets kind of watered down, and a few more people are allowed to get in, and then it becomes something where you can go, oh, I'm drinking out of a glass that Whitney Houston might have drunk out of on my stag night or my hen do. And then it just becomes commercialized. So every rebel outpost becomes commercialized eventually, but you just then have to move on. The concern I have for this country, the UK, with Brexit and the kind of shutting down of funding for a lot of projects, both science and art projects, because we can't get European funding anymore, is that the more sensitive rebels who would need, or the more sensitive artists, I'll stop calling them rebels, creatives, who would need the support of a group, and the support of a group that had maybe premises or some kind of infrastructure that you could join, with all those being destroyed. So, you know, like kind of local theatres can be sold off to become luxury flats. I'm completely neutral here politically, but So that's going to happen. It's going to happen because of Brexit. It's going to happen because of COVID. So consequently, people who would have benefited from those local resources, arts resources, are going to have a harder time now. I'm kind of lucky. I've built some resilience. I've learned some CBT techniques. I have my kind of gang, and I'm recognized as such, but it's taken decades for me to get to that position. I feel really sorry for young people who are coming through, and there isn't really a lot to support them. As I said, we got grants that we never had to pay back, and that was hard enough. But I don't know how the arts in this country are going to survive. I think the spirit will survive, but
yeah, I mean, you're saying there that you've got an inner resilience. How did you find that? Was it something that was always there, or you really had to sort of use these CBT techniques or use other techniques to develop it, or were you always able to rest back on it because you knew it was there under the covers?
I think I had to have 3 nervous breakdowns, which kind of relied on being depressed for a year each time. These were about 10 years apart. And at the bottom of each, I mean, you do hit the bottom. Anybody who's been that low knows you do hit the bottom, because if you don't, you never come back. So, and at hitting the bottom, there's this kind of, you sense something. It's terrible. It's dark. You never think you're coming back. But I always had this thing, and it was about harmony, and it was about the groove. It was about rhythm. There was nothing else there. And as I came back, because that had been the thing that was there, it kind of expanded a bit more each time I came back. So any other lies, nonsense, political shenanigans, it all just sort of became background noise to the groove and harmony. So now I know, I mean, who knows? I've learned a lot of techniques, so I'll never get depressed again. But who knows, if I do, it's still going to be there, and I'll come back, and I'll be older, and I'll be wiser, and there'll be even less kind of detritus of what I should be doing, or what I should be saying, or who I should be talking to. And it will be me in the groove. And there's enough people who want to play and dance and sing in harmony in the world. And there I'll be in the middle.
Creating the groove and the harmony.
Yeah,
and,
really. Yeah,
leading the yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll do it authentically, because it's now, if it's almost like I'm a hologram of myself built of groove and harmony. And there's lots of space, and it flickers a bit sometimes, but that's all that's there, And when I first did it, there was a kind of scared person in the middle going, I hope everybody loves me because I'm making them feel so good, and their bodies are getting flooded with chemicals, and they're all feel-good chemicals. And, so I knew the formula to look like the magician, but really I was the Wizard of Oz. Now I'm just a wizard, my own wizard.
Don't look behind the curtain.
Yeah, well, there is no curtain. That's the thing. They burn.
When you're talking there about hidden rock bottom, and I no way believe that I have been clinically depressed or to a point where that would be a diagnosis, but I've certainly bounced off the bottom of I've as deep as I can get, and several times in my life things have felt like the end of the world. 4 or 5 years ago, I was going through a phase of my life where I couldn't get out of bed. I was breaking into tears all the time. I couldn't plan more than 5 minutes ahead, sort of thing. What do I want to do later? Well, I don't know. I'm not sure what I want to do now, kind of thing. And it was I remember laying in bed with the world just going round and round in circles. There's no answers, no get off. There's no way of solving any problem. And I remember waking up one morning and just saying, I am. I'm good enough. I'm valid. Who I am is okay. And I didn't need to answer all the questions that were going around in my head. I almost like said, well, I'm not brushing them under the carpet. I'm just saying I don't need to answer that because I am.
Yeah.
I don't justify that. And that was what got me out of bed. And I think that experience 4 or 5 years ago unlocked a resilience which I probably had all my life, but now I can fall back on it consciously, knowing that it's there and it's there to save me, if you like. And I think when COVID hit last year, for me, it was just a case of, okay, have my cry, have my readjustment, have my pity party for a few days. And right, okay, what's my technique? My technique is going, right, I've done this before. I can do it again. And okay, I appreciate that as a privilege that I have that many people don't, but I was able to bounce back knowing that I could do it because I believed in myself, and I magic stuff out of nowhere. I can do it again, type thing. So that's kind of the resilient techniques I use, and it's amazing how you can almost do that on a day by day basis, because we all go through these little micro highs, micro lows that we don't really appreciate. And I think I mentioned to you earlier that this week I haven't had as many sales calls or raised as many invoices as I had the previous week. So therefore, my brain is telling me that I'm less happy because all those chemicals that were making me feel euphoric last week have disappeared this week. So I'm crashing and burning. So I just got to look myself in the mirror and going, nothing's changed. Nothing has changed in the world.
Yeah.
You're just going through this down cycle, and you just got to ignore it and bounce off it and go, right, next week I'm going to feel great again. And it's learning that, isn't it? And knowing that bounce back ability will happen if you keep on.
Yeah, and I think we are speaking, and I just want to be clear here that both you and I are speaking, living in one of the richest countries in the world, and we're professionals, and our houses are not going to disappear. There's going to be water in the tap, and the kettle's probably going to work. So we have the luxury of saying, well, if I get depressed, I will still have a roof over my head. A lot of people don't in the world. So I wouldn't say my formula of having a breakdown is going to work for everybody, nor would I recommend it. But it does, as you say, it does. And we have the luxury of reading books about saying, just be in the present. And actually, it sounds like what you're talking about. And I've talked to my wife about this recently, because sometimes I get visited by an avalanche of regret. And then I don't process it anymore in the kind of CBT way, which I'd have to sit down for 3 hours and do all these exercises. I just go, yeah, well, that's, who's that for? Who's that avalanche for? It's not affecting anybody else. It's in the past. Who's kind of in charge of this? And I just go, well, thank you, avalanche. I'm just going to listen to the birds singing. And really, it's not avoidance. It's not spiritual bypass. It's just a choice to go, well, yeah, all that's going on. It's going on for a lot of people all the time. But that is what those guys, I think, what they talk about enlightenment is. It is, you study with the master, and eventually the master just thwacks you around the head and goes, those studies were for nothing except for this thwack. Now, be in the present. And you go, oh, is that what it was all for? Yeah, that's what it was all for. I remember doing a workshop with a guy called Chuck Spezzano once when I was quite down, and a friend of mine took me there. And Chuck Spezzano is kind of spiritual leader in a way, but he was also a bit like a used car salesman. Lovely guy, American guy. And there's about 60 of us there for a weekend in London. And it's Friday night. And he said, so you've come on the happiness course. Let me tell you the short way to do this course. And he just stood there and he said, be happy. And we all sat there and he said, that's it. We said, what? And he said, oh, you want the complicated version. All right, everybody. Who had trouble with their parents growing up? And then we spent 2.5 days processing everybody, going through this. And then at the end, he said, "Okay, everybody, be happy." And then, having processed it all, we knew what he was talking about. But that option is always available to us. But we've been so conditioned that isn't available to us. We have to do all this complicated stuff. We have to, I know I keep coming back to
deal with it. We're told we have to deal with it, don't we?
Deal with it. Process it. Go through this therapy. Go through that therapy. Stop eating this. Stop eating that. Start eating this. Take more vitamins. You'll never get there unless you do this. It's there's a guy.
I was going to say, if you listen to this podcast and you're a CBT practitioner, or you've got qualifications in this, and you're shouting at the PC right now, going, "You don't know nothing." Well, we're not practitioners in any of it. We're just lived experience stuff. This isn't it.
CBT has saved my life. I really, if you look on my website, you'll see something called the 7-step remix process, which is CBT made funky. And really, I did process everything for 6 months, every day, until I processed a lot of what we then called mind talk. They call it self-talk, monkey mind, chatter. You do have to do it, but the annoying thing is, you do have to do it. But then you get to a point where you go, "Oh, I didn't have to do all that." But you have to do it in order to get to the point where you think, "I didn't have to do it." It's like as I say,
so you achieve mastery. You get through the practitioner phase, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have.
You become the master of that technique, and therefore you go direct to the end. You've done the graft, you've done the wax on, wax off, and the all the sort of things. So you've become the sort of like the Jedi or the dojo master or something, whatever you are. Yeah, you've done the time. I get that. Yeah.
And then when you get there, you think, but everyone said enlightenment was when everything would be fantastic all the time, and you wouldn't have to worry. You wouldn't get any bills. You wouldn't. It's not. It's you feel you're there, but you're living in the real world, and that's. I often say to people, run the business and branding your own business. It is far tougher road to enlightenment than sitting in the Himalayas for 20 years, letting your beard grow, or I don't know what the equivalent would be for a woman, but just kind of not looking after yourself.
Not shaving your legs for a couple of years, probably.
We're going to get into trouble here. But basically not kind of tending your body in any way, but just kind of concentrating on the inside. That's not what we're here for. What's the point of living in the world if you're not going to live in the world? You can get all that when you're dead, all that thing thereafter. And we're here to influence each other. I mean, crikey, the world would fall down if we all just went meditating. Well, actually, it wouldn't. Let's all go and meditate in the Himalayas and let the animals get on with it. I think that's probably the answer.
It might have an impact on Gillette's stock price if we did that. No one's going to be shaving their beard off for a while.
Yeah.
So we're a year into lockdown. We've 23rd of March is kind of in the UK when we got the broadcast from Boris telling us that to stay at home, protect the NHS and save lives. When that all started, almost only a few weeks away from that anniversary. So your business, your life was kind of based around being present in rooms full of people, facilitating, enlightening, empowering, activating people, and that must have been a real kind of nudge or knock that you found it's a year ago. So what was going through your mind at the time? What was going through the mind of someone who was in that environment, and how did you find yourself I don't know, moving forward from that?
I was a bit concerned because I'm unfortunately, I followed in the footsteps of my father, who was really lousy at opening the mail. And in those days, my mum would open it if it was red. If a bill was red, she'd open it. And somehow, we were poor, but she'd have squirreled away some money to pay the red bills. When COVID hit, I hadn't opened it. They don't send red bills anymore. They send black and white ones. So I hadn't opened the mail, and I opened a letter. I used to own a little pad, kind of rock star pad in central London, which was part of my income, renting it out. And they said, we're repossessing your flat. Basically, I hadn't, I could have paid, but I just missed some payments. So they repossessed it. And I said, well, that would be good. There'll be about 100 grand equity, swings and roundabouts. But the lawyers somehow carved up all the equity amongst themselves. I mean, at one point they were charging me, through a mistake of theirs, they charged me something like £2,000 a day interest on the loan. So I lost all that money. As I say, the van got burned. My income was based on, or my work was based on, getting people to drum in harmonies, in rhythm, sing in harmony, drum in rhythm. And I needed a place far away from the workplace in order that people would feel safe to do that. Now, online, because of the latency issue, we can't drum in time. So everyone's out of time. We can't sing in harmony because everyone sounds terrible. I don't know if you ever tried to sing happy birthdays. It's like, do that and drum. It sounds like sheds falling down in a storm. And the whole security of doing this out of the comfort zone stuff in a venue far away from the workplace had gone too. Everyone was at home with the dog watching, kids watching, spouses saying, is that what you do at work? So it was a complete disaster for me as far as my skills went. But I thought, well, what are the outcomes? They're team bonding, doing something together that's different, seems impossible. And not that I'd advertise it this way, but changing their neurochemistry by, getting up and moving and feeling different, doing something different, wearing a pair of sunglasses on Zoom. It's really simple stuff. So I just started playing their music from my laptop, which at that time was a 2015 MacBook, and sharing my computer sound and getting them to dance and move and bang two pens together or sticks. Now, because they're all muted and they were only listening to music I was playing them, they heard the music. They heard themselves playing along to the music. So they were in time. And the amazing thing was, and this was the paradigm shift for me that kind of has sustained me through this year, everyone's out of time together. So if I play them a track at 130 beats per minute, some people will be putting a hand in the air, some people will be putting their head back, so it's been a kind of choreography that would have been insanely expensive to design as a theatre piece, but it's happened by chance. So that is very exciting. It's very exciting to facilitate, and it's very exciting for them to be part of. So, and I can do that globally. I do global events. I don't have to drive anywhere. The biggest journey I do is from the kitchen to the studio, which is on the third floor, carrying 2 wooden spoons. So I do charge for transport and equipment, but that is, I can do these kind of universally successful events, and everybody says, like as before, where I started, that drumming session was fantastic. They're not playing any drums. Somehow it's because I've got drums in the background, and I might play one drum, although now I tend to just play chopsticks or something and get them to play. But there's drums on the tracks, so I play them. So, so as far as I know, this wasn't in your question. That is the beginning of it, but the end of it is, I think, when Boris kind of announces we're coming out of lockdown, as they're starting to do now, the main thing I hear from people, not just in the business, but from everyone, is kind of anxiety, because they know it's not going to be the same going back to work. Everything's the same and everything's different. And if we're talking about inclusion here and exclusion, everyone's going to be thinking, what is the right protocol? Do we go back? And it's almost like a bereavement. You don't know what to say, when someone's died or more than one person's died. What do you say when you get back to the office? And the office is exactly the same. The coffee machine's in the same place. The work is the same. We are going to go through something, that we've never been through. I suppose it will be like the end of the war, in a way, the Second World War, that my mum and dad met in, and my gran told me a lot about the war. It's going to be like that. We're going to go, oh, we're back. Now what do we do? So, and my managers are encouraging me to, which I'm designing now, kind of not calling them rituals, but exercises that we can do back in the office to do with checking in, forming a circle, and just ways to sort of reintegrate ourselves into the workplace. Because it's going to be massive. It's really one of the biggest things of this, of this century so far. It's got to be.
Oh, I completely agree. And even before we actually step foot in the workplace, we've got to get to the workplace. Sitting on the train for 2 hours with a mask on, because I can't see masks disappearing overnight. There's still going to be some restrictions. Even we're going to be cautious about walking too close to each other. We're going to be cautious on escalators. But we want to pack ourselves on the Waterloo and City line anymore. Nose to nose, bumper to bumper. Are we going to be cramming ourselves in pubs anymore? So I think we've kind of got used to having space around us. And are we ready to sort of give our personal space back and share it again? And I think there's a whole load of anxieties, as you say, that are yet to come. And I think any workplace that isn't starting their workforce planning around reintegration, hundreds of thousands of people have been onboarded into an organization where they've never met the people and they've never even been to the physical office. So there's a whole load of people out there that we need to bring, make part, include. Will we have screens up still? The supermarkets aren't going to suddenly take down all the perspex on the 21st of June. The banks aren't going to suddenly change this. We're not going to get rid of all of those hand sanitizing machines everywhere, because there'll still be this risk of return. We're not out of the woods. We may have been vaccinated, but we don't know what's going to go on. They even talk about potential flare-up every winter. And every winter, we're going to have some level of social distancing, mask wearing, sanitization, hand, space, face, whatever we want to call it, for the foreseeable, until it becomes a part of history and it's just eventually just faded out. So yeah, I completely get it. Workforce planning, the work, how we transport and travel, how we socialize, everything is changing. Cater for that with the pressures that women have found working from home. There's a lot of gender inequality in the workplace, working from home. There's a lot of social divide around internet, not have internet technology, not have technology. There's a whole load of different experiences people have. They're going to have to, as you say, come back and grieve over this year, isn't it?
Yeah, and you imagine, one of the things I'm suggesting in a very simple kind of movie I'm making is, as a tip, to get back, which is what musicians do, and it's what theatre groups do. At the beginning of the day, every day, actually, if they're working on a show or working on a production, is you get in a circle, you make sure the circle is circular for a start. And this is interesting because on Zoom, the hierarchy of the company is gone. We're all in the same box, in the same size. The CEO doesn't have a bigger box on Zoom, a bigger picture. So forming the circle and being in the circle is, it will emulate that a little bit. And also the whole thing about being on mute and not, and unmuting yourself, that has been going on in circles of performers and artists for probably centuries. That you speak, you have a time to speak, which might be timed by a timekeeper, 1 minute, 2 minutes. You share exactly how you're feeling authentically. You don't go, I'm fine. COVID's been a bit annoying, but actually I'm fine. You just go, as much grief can come out, or as much positivity, or as much hope can come out in that time. And then nobody says, oh yeah, I feel like that, or oh, you shouldn't feel that bad. Oh, let's go for a coffee. Yeah, you're not allowed to say anything like that. You go on to the next person. They speak. They had a great time. The next person speaks. Their grandfather died. You go around, but you build this kind of circle of trust, and then you go on and you live that day, and then when you come back the next day, someone else might have gone down, someone else might have come up, but gradually you build this it's kind of circle of vulnerability, but support, and we're going to need to do those sorts of things, because if we just go back and go, oh yeah, anyone go to Starbucks, it's other coffees available, but it's just it's going to be a disaster. As I might as well mention this, but my mum died when I was 13, and at that point, I thought the adults in the world knew everything. I wasn't even told she was dying. I was just told she died last night. Sorry to have to tell you. And nobody knew how to cope with it. Nobody phoned my school. Nobody, if her name was spoken, people got embarrassed. It was like living in this crazy world all of a sudden where nobody knew anything. That the illusion that adults could run things was taken from it. And I think if we try to go back to work and we don't acknowledge, like we didn't acknowledge my mum's death, if we don't acknowledge what COVID has done, even to the point of, simple things like you're saying, like not being able to get into high heels anymore because our feet have expanded, and that's just the men. There'll be all sorts of things that we can't do anymore or don't want to do anymore. And we've got to talk about them, and we've got to restructure accordingly, because this is the paradigm shift that Extinction Rebellion were talking about, where everyone said, don't be crazy. We can't stop the planes flying. We can't stop commuting. You're mad, you people. Think of Pauline on the checkout. Think of poor Pauline, not being able to get to work. Pauline hadn't gone to work for a year. The world hadn't ended. So it's been delivered to us. We can now change. Will we? That would be, I would love that kind of inclusion to go, yeah, all right, we're all in the same boat. The Tories talk about it as if we are, but we're not in their posh boat where nothing changes for them. Like I said, I'm completely neutral politically, but they do rather annoy me sometimes. So let's all be in the same boat, and let's say, yeah, this is an opportunity. We didn't see it coming. Let's change. They're already taking apart all the jumbo jets, so we can't go back to that kind of flying around the world all the time because we're scared of hitting the wrong button on Zoom. So we'd rather go to a meeting. We've been trained. We're returning to a completely different world, and we have to acknowledge that, and we have to work with the advantages of it.
Oh, certainly. When I talk to a lot of my clients and customers, there's a lot more emphasis on storytelling, lived experience, understanding people being vulnerable, and it's accepted that people can be vulnerable now because, as you say, we've all lived through the same storm. Our boats, some of us have engines, some of us the sails are broken, etc. So we're in different boats, but we have got this kind of shared experience where we know that what's going on in someone's mind. We can very easily say when we meet someone online or wherever that, how's it going for you? How's lockdown been? So we've got this common theme, other than the weather, to talk about for the first time in British history, or the war. So I think it is. I think it's really important, as you say, to keep telling these stories, not let the dead die in vain, not let the people who have suffered suffer in vain, not understanding the social inequities, the impact of low social economic groups and their susceptibility to dying of COVID because of the environments they're living in. We've got to unpack this. We've got to put it on the table and say, well, now we shall not propagate this. We've got to learn from this. And that's, I'm hoping that the population, the people, will tell these stories, and we won't let, if you like, the ruling class, the government, the privileged, try and revert us back and to where we were and just tell it, oh, forget about it, we'll just carry on. Here's some cash, get on with it. I hope we do put a stake in the ground and say, no, we're not going back. Let's keep what we've learned, tell those stories. Because if we don't, all we've done is people have died for nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can tell those stories in different ways. I recently saw, admittedly, on social media, it was just a meme, but it had the nations who'd done best in COVID times, as far as protecting the population, and the nations that had done worst. And you can imagine, gender-wise, all the nations who'd done best were run by women. All the nations who did worst were run by men. I mean, it's that simple. So what does that tell us? I wonder whether, given that we've been ruled by men for a long time now, claiming they knew what they were doing, they didn't. The women knew. Why don't we just say, okay, boys, you've had your time. We're just going to give it to the women for the next 10 years. I mean, really, if I was head of the United Nations and I had any power, that's what I would do. I'd say, maybe they'll make some mistakes, but crikey, they can't make any worse mistakes than the men who just, cronyism has run rife. I mean, it's been embarrassing the way the world has responded, really, especially the men. I often feel ashamed of my gender and the way they behave. They just assume power. It's, they're idiots, and women know how to handle crisis. If I want to be general about it.
I mean, for sure, I completely agree that what we need to do is start valuing different personality attributes in different ways. So when we think about empathy, emotional connections, I'm not saying we stereotype women and saying all they have is empathy and emotional connections. What we're saying, there are what we would consider feminine traits, or what we consider masculine traits, and we always seem to value masculine traits and big, loud, boisterous, overly confident tends to rule the world. And what we need to look is look at the meritocracy, look at what makes up the meritocracy, look at what makes someone valuable, and start to value different attributes and skills that many men have, but they're often submerged because they hide them, they cover them in order to fit in with their colleagues. And there are skills that women have that are valuable, and sometimes they mask them in order to fit into the male world. So I think by looking at the different elements of meritocracy, looking at different personalities that people have, they're really analysing what skills and we need in the roles of business leaders, politicians, world leaders, or whatever that may be. And we don't try and make this gender bias balance, saying, well, men tried it and got it wrong, therefore women have a go. What we need to look at is what are the best attributes of the leaders that we want to see, and encourage those behaviors in our children. We nurture that through schools, and we create that environment where we're breeding better, more rounded human beings that aren't necessarily categorized by gender or by race or by color or whatever that may be. And that's the challenge of building this equitable society with the social injustice, isn't it?
I'm being too black and white in talking about it in gender terms, but I sometimes have to play the devil's advocate to get the conversation going. But you're right. But it's so if we take Jacinda Ardern, on one kind of end of the spectrum about how to govern, where she says, well, GDP isn't the main thing of New Zealand. That's not what we're going for. We're not going to go for continuous growth, which is the basis of capitalism. She says we're going to go for the emotional well-being and the health of the whole population. That is seen as revolutionary. Well, it's not really, is it? If you were to run a tribe. And then on the other side, you have these pantomime dames, Boris and what's his name, Trump, who could not be more exaggerated examples of stupidity, greed, vanity, and absolute kind of desolation as far as emotional intelligence goes. So we have these examples now. And and you're right, they're not male and female. They're just attitudes, really, to getting things done. I mean, that's all politicians do. Yeah. We give them their money, they get things done, or they don't get them done. So I think you're right, but let's look around and let's not go, let's draw a line in the sand. COVID's gone. Hooray. Let's all have a party. Let's have a, history. What was they talking about? Festival of Brexit.
Yeah. Let's get a street party, put the big tables out, get our flags out and sing Royal Britannia. Because that's not what we're after.
And let's stop being negative and mentioning COVID and, the hundreds of thousands that died, through mismanagement. I mean, it will happen, it will happen. They'll try, but we must resist.
Yeah, we must resist. Can I put you on the spot? I mean, when I've listened to some of your gigs and been part of some of your gigs, I love the simplicity that you say to people about how anyone can play a tune. And you say this little phrase, and with the phrase, you tap the rhythm out on a baked bean can with a couple of chopsticks. Do you have your chopsticks and a baked bean can handy and just tell the audience, I love you and don't you forget it, and how to bring that tune to life?
Well, given that you can edit this, I can do it. Let me see.
All right, so this is the pause. Tumbleweed. Yeah. The studio is now being wrecked as Tom bends over and knocks over the guitar and the keyboard.
I'm looking for a can. I might have to do it on a colander. Let me see if it works.
A colander's good. I mean, as far as the audience is concerned, they're on audio only. They can't see you, so I don't think whether it's a can or a colander, it doesn't matter. I did put you on the spot here, and I do appreciate that.
Tie myself in knots on the lead.
Don't destroy the myth that Tom's always got a can and a pair of chopsticks in his pocket.
Let me see if it'll work on me. Yeah, we're just about work on it. Yeah, I can do that. Do you want me to still pretend it's a can, or shall I say it's a colander?
No. I mean, I might even not cut this. We'll just leave it rolling. So,
okay. So this is...
Tell us the story.
This is a colander on the floor. When I studied, Latin American percussion, I mean, you've got the basic... I'm going to play this on a remote control and the other end of a wooden spoon. So you've got the clave, which is... which is the basis of a lot of carnival music. And then I say to people, if you find yourself in the carnival and you feel a bit excluded because you feel a bit white and tourist, just pick up anything on the ground. It could be a tin can. I've actually got a colander here, which is on my studio floor at all times, and I'm going to play it with a wooden spoon. So, and the rhythm is "I love you and don't you forget it." So, even if so you don't have to remember the rhythm. You just think, "Oh, I love you and don't you forget it." You can't even say it a different way than the way of the beat. It's, I love you and don't you forget it. So if you put that with the clave, then you've pretty much got a carnival. You just need a bass drum underneath. Dum 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 dum. I've got hundreds of people playing that, thousands over the last year, and I've also got, with parents playing it, I've got their kids watching, and I say to the kids, kids, when your parents say they're going to work and they're doing serious stuff, this is what they're doing, really. I love that. And then I just get the kids joining in, playing buckets, and the other day I said, again, it was a corporate team building gig. Everyone was standing up because I get them standing up. And I said, do you know what we're all missing going on holiday? Bring something to the screen that reminds you of holiday. So they're bringing goggles and masks and snorkels. And then the kids always end up sort of crowding in. They can't resist it. So one of this little girl, she must have been about 7 years old. She started doing the crawl. She put these goggles on and she was doing the crawl in the air. And her dad, who's this big guy, he picked her up. So she was kind of horizontal in the air doing the crawl, but doing it really well. I mean, she was a dancer, this girl, obviously a natural dancer. So I just said to all 30 of them, the board and everybody, I said, okay, everybody, let's do the crawl. So they're all swimming in the air, and they were bringing things like suntan lotion and hats and all sorts. I said to them, see how many pairs of sunglasses you can jam on your head. So some people were wearing 5 pairs of sunglasses, and that began with them just me saying, why don't you play this rhythm? It turns into this circus of creativity. And I know, you see, the thing is, I've been doing this so long, I know that's not far from the surface in anybody. It's dying to come out, and it seems especially dying to come out in lockdown. So I've just had a whale of a time this year, and to be honest, I'm quite concerned about going back on stage because I can't. Even if I see someone in the back row, it takes who really is a good dancer. It takes quite a lot of kerfuffle to get them on stage. On Zoom, I can just spotlight them in a second, or if I'm working with a spotlight, then I just go spotlight that guy. Them. Let's bring him. I don't even whisper it. I think because I can see their name. Bring Joe to the stage. Joe and his daughter, and they become stars instantly. And what does that do to a team who are used to going on away days and having gala dinners and getting indigestion and staying up too late and pretending they haven't got a hangover because they're tough? All that is gone. They're at home and they're just having a whale of a time. And the feedback as it comes in, the chat is, this is incredible, or go Joe, or go Julie, or it's it's amazing what we've done. And I'm kind of concerned that because the government say go back to your offices because we want to keep Starbucks and Pret a Manger open, it's nothing in comparison to what they're doing now. Pret and Starbucks can work out a different business model. I don't want them to fail, but let's not go and return to the old thing just to keep the old structures going. We've built this glorious world of kind of interaction and color and kids being involved rather than being left crying because their dad's at a conference for 3 days and all he's doing is getting a hangover. Like I say, I'm neutral about the whole thing.
Amazing. I mean, Tom, absolutely amazing. I've sat through, been part of many of your Rockstar Activator sessions, both as a spotlighter for you or sitting, working on your production behind the camera. And I'm always in awe of, you think it's a one-off, how can anybody do that again? Then next time they're producing bass guitars, drum kits out of nowhere. They've got this sort of African drum comes out, and then you got this sort of like this Japanese thing pops up, and everyone's got these instruments in their homes, and they just bring them out, and suddenly they're on camera, and everyone is dancing, everyone's engaging. Their whole families are involved, not just the people, the corporate business people.
Yeah.
It's all the children suddenly become part of it, and then mum and dad and the children, or dad and the children, and mama and the children are all joining in together, making this a family event, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talk about inclusion. If I've done, pre-COVID, I've helped out on family days at companies. It takes them 4 months to organize those family days, and they might get a big top or something. They might get a clown in, but it's nothing like what we do online. And it doesn't take any organizing at all, except clicking the Zoom link. And if on those family days, those on-site ones, I'd say, okay, I'm going to email you a list, bring some sunglasses, bring a hat, half the people would turn out and go, yeah, I never read the email. Whereas if I do it on Zoom, I know all that stuff is in the house. There's no way if I say, right, everyone, get a colander and a wooden spoon. They've all got a colander and a wooden spoon. And they've all got hats, and they've all got, as you say, they've all got these surprise instruments. If I say, all right, so mime, guitar, just with a, wooden spoon or mime with a clipboard or something, the screen will fill with guitars and banjos and all sorts, tennis rackets. It's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal what people have got at home.
It is. Yeah. And the power of your Rockstar Activator sort of show, really, because it really does. Everybody feels part of it, don't they? Everybody feels like they want to take part, and it brings out their inner sort of show off almost, because they feel safe in their own home, don't they? They don't feel like they're being embarrassed because all they can see is you and them, sort of thing. So it's a very safe space, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, I've got guitars and drums and all sorts here, but very often I say, okay, let's play guitar, and I just play a wooden spoon, or so I'm not the king of the show, and people bring pillows, they just grab cushions and they play them like kind of real rock stars. It's amazing. They believe it, and because
it is,
screens full of their colleagues doing the same, as you said, they kind of build the energy themselves. If Pam's doing that, I can do this. If Joe's doing this, so it's
they're trying to outdo each other and outshine and out guitar each other, aren't they? It's rivalry and everything is going on. It's fantastic.
I don't even think it's that competitive. I think it's okay. So it's more like permission. I see. We're allowed to do this. I don't think they're trying to. I don't get the sense they're trying to beat each other. It's like okay then. I get it. It's cloak time. It's it's kind of that whole thing about the shades I just discovered. Well, you seem to have 2 pairs of shades there. Why don't you get them both on? And then if I put 5 pairs of shades on, they're all, right. It's kind of insect time. It's it's just outrageous what happens. You couldn't do it in a creativity workshop if you planned it. It's just play the music, play it loud. Their systems are good, or they're wearing headphones, and they just get really excited. It's like being at a gig. It's amazing.
Fantastic. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about you, your Rockstar Activator program, or just generally saying hi? How do they get hold of you?
Well, my name is Tom Morley, TOMMORLEY. So I'm at tommorley.com. I'm all over the internet as well. If you were to put in Tom Morley drums into a search or Tom Morley rockstar, you'd find me. But if you come to the website, then you can find everything, all the tags, and you can email me from there. And also, that email will also go to my managers. So if you're thinking, yeah, this guy sounds a bit weird, but is he organized? If you email me, it'll go straight to them. And if you say, yeah, well, I just need a price to take to a meeting, you'll get it within an hour. I mean, you don't have to say it in that voice. You can say, I need a price to take to a meeting. So we cater for everybody. And so there's a whole structure behind me. Luckily, there didn't used to be, but there is now last year, which is great because all I have to do is worry or concern myself with the creativity, and they do all the contracts and all that. They just send me some money every now and then.
Yeah, you do rhythm and groove. Somebody else does invoice and finance. That's the way it should be, isn't it?
Yeah. And they do it really well. I mean, it's a great formula. I wish I'd learned it 40 years ago. But there you go.
Well, a huge thank you. It's been an absolute honour and privilege to spend another hour and a bit's company with you. I know we get on and we talk often, but this has been inspirational. I've learned some stuff about that I never knew before. And and a huge thank you to you, the listener, for tuning in and keeping up this far. Please do subscribe to keep updated on future episodes of the Included Bites podcast. That's BITES. Tell your friends, tell your colleagues. And I've got a number of, well, as I say, more exciting guests. I'm not sure we can get more exciting than the guests we've had already on the show, but I've got loads more guests lined up that I'm sure you're going to be inspired by over the next weeks and months. And of course, why don't you come on the show? I'm sure you can be inspirational, and I'm sure you can bring some insight into your own world. So please do let me know. Welcome your feedback, your suggestions, how we can improve the show. So email me at joe.lockwood@seechangehappen.co.uk. That will come to me. I won't be passing it on to my manager or anybody like that. You'll get me with that email address, guaranteed. So my name is Joanne Lockwood. It's been an absolute honour and a pleasure to host this podcast for you today. Catch you next time. Bye.